Welcome to another Cleverdix podcast. In this podcast, we talk to Cameron Stanley. Cameron is a New Zealand swimmer who was previously very competitive and represented New Zealand. He's also done a fair amount of coaching. He's coached at North Shore and also at Wanaka in the South Island. We met him down in Alexandra when we were doing some cold swimming, when he came down to try to set some world records, which he got. But he's also done some other swims. He swum the length of Wakatipu, which is over 40 kilometers. Cameron's got a really good story. He's not just a swimmer, he's also a musician and a runner. We had a great chat with him. I'm sure you're going to enjoy this. Okay, welcome to another Cleverdix podcast. In this podcast, we're going to talk to Cameron Stanley. Welcome, Cameron.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be with you.
Good. So, Cameron, the way we normally start this off is we give you a bit of an opportunity just to tell us kind of your swim story, your swim history, and then once you've told us a little bit about yourself, then we can go along and just sort of see where the conversation actually goes to. So, I suppose you can go back as early as you want, whether you remember your first swim coach or swim teacher, or what is your swim story? It's a pretty good one, so let's have it.
So I started when I was about 10 years old at North Shore Swimming Club. My first coach that I really remember, I had a couple of coaches before that, was actually Donna Bouzaid, who was coaching the junior program there at the time. And I swam for North Shore for my entire sort of initial swimming career up until my early 20s. I had a few health problems that ended up stopping me swimming. And then I also started coaching at North Shore at around about the time I finished swimming, so just before I finished in 2008. And I coached at North Shore on and off till about 2017 or 16. And then I've been a coach sort of on and off since 2008 as well. I've worked at a few other clubs, most recently at Wanaka Swim Club down where I moved 5 years ago. Done a bit of open water swimming particularly since I've moved here, because it's a bit of a paradise for that sort of thing. So do quite a bit of that. Swam the length of the lake in a wetsuit a few years ago in 2020. And then got into ice swimming this year for the first time, which was a new thing and interesting challenge. So, yeah, that's the brief version. Anyway.
Yeah, that is a brief version. I think you skipped over a little bit of your competitive career.
So I was a backstroker. I was a New Zealand Open record holder for the 200 backstroke short course. I broke that for the first time in 2008. So that was my best event, the 200 backstroke. Never went to a World Champs or Olympics, unfortunately. Would have loved to, but wasn't quite there, and then had a few health problems after that. That sort of probably ended my swimming time before I would have liked, but it's the way it goes. But managed to represent New Zealand on a few sort of teams underneath that, World University Games, Oceania Champs.
Oh, that's very cool. And now with ice swimming, you kind of skip right over the top, and you're in the Guinness Book of Records, and you're a world champ. Is that right?
I guess for a new event in the 200 IM. I was happy with that. To be honest, I was more happy with just getting to the end of 1,000 meters. That was probably, I think, my biggest achievement and challenge for the week. I think I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to do it. And I think whenever you talk to someone else who doesn't know anything about swimming and ice swimming or whatever, if you say you swum 1,000 meters in 2.1 degrees, just about everyone's impressed with that.
Yeah.
So tell us about that 1,000 meter. Well, maybe tell us what got you into ice swimming in the first place, and talk us through that 1,000 meters and what was the tricky bits.
Yeah, so I sort of came to ice swimming by being roped in, really. I've got a friend and colleague, Belinda Donaldson, who some of you may know. She's a bit of an open water swimming legend. I worked with her here at Wanaka Swim Club for a few years, and I've worked with her at North Shore prior to that. And she had actually seen the ice swimming that ice swimming was on. And a friend, Laura Quilter, who you probably also know as well, was here at the time. And Belinda sort of said to her, "Oh, why don't you do this, Laura? You could do that." And Laura was like, "Oh, yeah, maybe. I might be keen." And then she sort of turned to me and said, "Oh, but would you do it if I did it? Because it'd be way more fun to do it with someone else." And I was like, "Oh yeah, sure." I'm sort of thinking, Laura lives in Auckland, thinking at the time, she's really going to do this. She just competed at New Zealand Opens as well. I was like, she's pretty serious about her warm pool swimming at the moment, so she won't do this. And then, sure enough, a couple of weeks later, she messages me and she's like, "I booked flights. I'm really keen on this ice swimming." And I'm like, "Oh, no, now I'm going to have to do it." So, I sort of went down to the river. This was in about, mid-April, went down to the river and started trying to do a bit of training. And I actually have swum in the cold water a bit before. I did one winter where I did bits and pieces in the lake, not long stints, but bits and pieces. And I don't mind it except for the brain freeze. I get this sort of excruciating brain freeze whenever I swim. And apart from that, I actually quite enjoy the experience up to a point. And so I went down there and I remember swimming in this river and getting brain freeze at about 12 or 13 degrees. And it just being terribly painful, and so painful that I was even getting it swimming on my back just from the drips that were coming off my hand because I wasn't conditioned to it at all. And I lasted about 5 minutes on that first swim, and initially only entered the 50 and 100 backstroke for that reason. And then sort of I have what my potential flaw or also a benefit of my personality is once I sort of get into something, I tend to be like, right, I'm going to really go into this and do it properly. And so sort of once I got a little bit started, I was like, oh, if I'm going to do this, I might as well do it properly. And, the 1,000 meters is the longest event. It's the one everyone wants to do. So I'll enter that. And sure enough, that's how I ended up doing it.
Sounds more like a superpower rather than a flaw in my mind.
Well, it can be a bit of both.
Do you find you're significantly slower in cold water as opposed to warm water?
Yeah, definitely. I actually did a few swims in pools. It's always hard to tell when you're swimming in open water versus the pool because you're slower in the open water anyway, so it makes it a little bit trickier. But I did a couple of swims in the Alex pool beforehand, and of only about 500 meters. And this was when it was a bit warmer than the comp as well. It was probably 5-6 degrees rather than 2. And I noticed quite significantly slower, probably for the same amount of effort, 7 or 8 seconds per 100.
Okay, so that's quite significant, eh?
Yeah, quite significant. And I even noticed that just recently, actually, we had the pool had to be it had a week of, being emptied and retiled or whatever, and they filled it back up. And on Monday morning, it was only 19 degrees when we went in. And of course, I went in, I can go in at some 5K and that. And it wasn't a problem from like a physical cold perspective, but I was trying to do turnarounds on what I would normally do. And it was about, I had to go everything about 5 seconds slower because I was amazed that even at like that sort of 18, 19 degree mark, you're still quite significantly slower.
It's crazy that, eh? Must be a bit of a science there.
Well, you know what that means? If Cameron slows down by that much, it probably means that I slow down about 30 seconds, 100, from...
so based on that, 19 degrees to sort of 26, when the water gets to about 50 degrees, we should be pretty quick. Eh? Yeah. All right. So you hold or held the New Zealand 200-meter backstroke record?
Held. Short course, yeah.
Held, okay. So how long ago was that broken and by who?
It was first broken by Matt Stanley, who's no relation to me. I did swim with him for a little while. I'm sure most of you and most of your listeners will know who he is. He was the first person to swim faster than Duncan. So he was the first person. He broke it in 2013 or 14, I think. And it's since been broken again. I think Andrew Jeffcoat holds it now. I'm not 100% sure on that. But,
okay.
Yeah.
And, how different is the mindset? Because, you can't really think of two opposites in terms of a 200-meter sort of pool race versus swimming the length of Lake Wanaka. How does that compare in terms of mindset and training, and which was the most difficult?
I mean, they're difficult in their own way, I guess. Everything's different. Like I was a bit older when I swam Lake Wanaka. I wouldn't have trained as much as when I was a proper competitive swimmer. Back when I was swimming 10 times a week for 2 hours, I didn't swim that much. I did swim a lot, but not that much.
Yeah.
I think it was more the longer swimming. I mean, the challenge is definitely the duration and the sort of fatigue on your body and the pain that creates and the keeping yourself going. For me, I guess and in a way that was probably more similar to the 1,000 meters at the Ice Champs. The focus is solely on getting to the end, or it was for me anyway. And so like at the Ice Champs, I was counting down laps, sort of being like, you've only got 10 laps to go. You've only got 9 laps to go. I'm a sort of big counter. I like to have numbers in my head and be ticking them off. And similarly in the lake, I'd sort of swim along and I'd be counting my strokes, especially once the second half came around and, you're getting fatigued. And I'd switch between a bit of backstroke and freestyle because luckily that I can swim not too much slower on my back. So I was able to do that. But again, I'd sort of count strokes and I'd sort of just swim along and be like, you've got to do 100 strokes freestyle before you're allowed to do any more backstroke, or 200 or whatever it was. And I'd just tick them off and then I'd give myself a 20 strokes on my back or whatever. And I sort of knew I had a number and I've forgotten it now, but it was somewhere around 4,000 or 3,600 stroke cycles or something, which was an hour. And then when I did an hour, I got to have a drink, have a 30-second stop, and then carried on. So I think that those big sort of chunky goals where you're sort of more focused on completion, I think, breaking it down and having a little goal in your mind. Whereas when you're doing it something short in the pool, like a 200 or something, you're more focused on executing all your skills right. There's obviously pain at the end, but it's quite short. But you've got to execute everything exactly right under that pressure, whereas you can make a little error in your stroke or something in a 44K lake swim, but you have to be able to keep going for 12 hours or whatever it is. So, different skills.
Yeah, I guess that's right. But, the stroke, even on a long swim, is still really important because you got to keep the efficiency going. Otherwise that's, if the fatigue impacts your stroke too much, then you'll just end up slowing down and not completing what you set out to do, I suppose.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, to a point, but it doesn't have to be as flawless as like a short race in the pool would be. Like, you see those 50-meter sprinters and they get off the block 0.05 of a second too slow, they could already lose their race before they've even started. So it's not quite that level of perfection that you have to get to, but it still has to be pretty good.
Yeah, wow.
Did you chafe
on the long swim?
A little bit.
In the wetsuit?
A little bit, but not too bad. I had put some glide on beforehand. I guess probably the most noticeable thing for me was just the pain in my arms. I remember sort of struggling to sleep that night because of sore shoulders and this and that, and not wanting to roll onto my side and that sort of thing. So it was more that sort of pain and general fatigue that hurt me more than.
What type of training did you do? Like, how far did you swim on a weekly basis to train for that swim?
I probably swam between 40 and 50K a week for a couple of months and sort of built up to that beforehand. We were lucky that at the time there's a lake swimmers club down here in Wanaka and there's one in Queenstown. And there was a challenge going on that had been set up. It was the first time I think it had ever been done, and it was set up as each club had to try and swim the perimeter of their lake over the summer, and the club to do it first won. And so we were actually, and at the time I was only coaching, which was lucky, so I was free a lot of the time during the day. And so we were going out during the day and borrowing people's boats, or, Belinda's husband Malcolm had a boat, so he'd take it out sometimes, and going to these random spots on the lake and swimming for 2 or 3 hours. And coming back, and you sort of one person that's get dropped off here and another person get dropped off there, and you swim and meet in the middle and tick off 20 kilometres of the lake or something. So we did quite a bit of that, which was really interesting, getting to swim in places that you'd probably never go to, and they were only accessible by boat. And then so that was a great way to train without feeling like you were training too much. I did do some pretty boring stuff in the pool as well, 10 1000s, 100 100s, that sort of boring stuff that you can't get away from. But fortunately, I had that lake swimming that made it a bit more interesting.
That swimming around the lake, I know there's a couple of people who've done around Taupo, and they said it's actually really interesting as you go. the conditions change so much, and Taupo in particular has got warm spots and cold spots, whether it's winter or summer. Did you find anything like that, or was it fairly constant all the way around the lake?
Yeah, it was very different. The head of the lake's quite cold. It's quite a different sort of climate up there. They get a lot more rain. They've got the river coming in from straight off the mountains. So often the lake can be sort of 18 to 20 degrees in town, and actually like 12 or even less up the head of the lake. Like when I did the lake swim, it started off at 12 at the head of the lake, and we finished and it was 18 or 19 down in town. So it's quite a big difference from either end. We had some pretty good stories actually from swimming in the lake as well. We got chased by birds and seagulls, dive bombed by seagulls, and we had a time. one of the more funny ones was actually I'd gone up with Belinda, and I was relatively new to the area, and I didn't really know that area of the lake very well. And we'd gone up in two vehicles, and Belinda was going to kayak alongside me, and I was going to swim 4K because we both had to. We only had a certain period of time, and we wanted to tick off some of that northern end of the lake. And so we drove two cars, and we thought there was only one other lake access up at this end of the lake, and it turns out there wasn't. But that will become clear in the rest of the story. But we drove up there, and we dropped the car off at the first spot where we think the only lake access is. And I started a GPS on my phone to see how far we were going, just to confirm we were in the right place. But it didn't load properly because of the mountains. Anyway, it said we'd done 4K in the car, but we'd actually done 11, and we got to the second.
Jesus.
the second car, and we got out into the kayak, and I got out to go swimming, and it was a really bad day as well. We just had all these floods in Wanaka. The year was really heavy. We had a whole lot of heavy rain, and it flooded in town, and it was just after that. And the lake up the northern end was all silty from the river, and it was freezing. It must have been about 10 degrees. And I was in a wetsuit, and it was a sunny day, but it was windy as well. And so we got in and we got started, and Belinda was sort of mucking around getting in the kayak, and I swam off around the corner, and it was so cold that I was waiting for her, and I got out and stood on a rock, so I didn't want to be in the water. I waited for her. It was windy and the wind played. And then sort of she comes around the corner, and we're swimming along, and there's bits where she's washing on top of me, and fortunately she's quite experienced at a kayak, so she was able to handle it. But, it was pretty tough conditions. And then we sort of washed up 4Ks down at this place where we thought we'd parked the car, and we dragged the kayak up onto the beach, and we're sort of walking around. We're going, where's the car? Where is it? We're looking everywhere, and there's all these tourists and these people around sort of taking photos. It's quite a sort of popular spot. And, it's a terrible day. There's all these waves breaking on the beach. And we looked everywhere, we couldn't find them. We're like, what are we going to do? And we had no cell phone service up that end of the lake. And we'd planned on being back, and we had things to do. And so we had no other choice. We let's just get in and just keep swimming. And then we sort of swam another two. We sort of managed to half load a map. We're like, maybe there's an access down here, which was another 2K. So we keep going another 2K, and we get out, and we realize that was not a lake access at all. And we're sort of standing on the sort of precipice on the side, and it's all really steep up there. Like there's a big cliff, and you can hardly get up to the road. Yeah. And we're sort of looking, we're like, maybe we could try and bush bash our way up there and sort of hitchhike, but we're like, it's a bit of a cliff. We probably can't drag the kayak. We're probably going to cut up our wetsuits, which were new. So anyway, we just ended up having to keep going and going and going. Eventually, after about 3 hours and about 11 kilometres, we finally arrived at where we'd parked the car. And we got back out, and I was sunburned because I hadn't put any sunscreen on. It was in November, and we were expecting to sort of only go for sort of 45 minutes to an hour. And it was a bit of a funny story when we got back.
There's a bit of a learning curve in there, right?
Yeah.
Hey, you got to pick your seconds carefully when you swim outdoors, eh? Damn. So you mentioned at the start of this chat that your very first coach was Donna.
Yes, or first sort of really coach for an extended period, yeah.
I got you. Okay, because Donna was, by my research, the very first person to swim around Rangitoto Island.
Yes, that probably sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, she was. So she was the first. I think it was, if I said like 1996, sort of rings a bell, like somewhere there or there's about. And I'm guessing that you've inherited a little bit of her sort of poor planning, because she she aimed to go around Rangitoto Island, but she landed up missing the gap, from what I understand. And they did Rangitoto and Motitopo. Is that how you pronounce it? Motitopo Island. So she did both islands instead of just the one, right? So she swam 32 Ks instead of 20 Ks. So you definitely inherited that from your coach, dude.
Yeah, well, that's definitely a worse mistake, I'd have to say. What were a support crew doing? Surely you could blame that on them.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I think it's all about picking your supporters, eh?
So tell us a little bit about your coaching philosophy.
I guess I believe in a sort of holistic approach, making things fun. I guess building better people through swimming. I think swimming's a great tool to learn a bunch of skills for life. I mean, obviously the first obvious one being swimming itself and the safety around the water that gives you and the confidence around the water, but then also a lot of other soft skills that you sort of learn: resilience, mental toughness, how to work hard, commitment, punctuality, all those things that sort of go with being a competitive swimmer. So I believe in, sort of trying to teach those lessons through swimming. And I guess in your planning and swimming, it's easy. Coaches often get focused on this amount of distance and this amount of kick and this amount of max VO2. And sometimes they can lose the picture of, some of these other skills that you're trying to teach. And even things like, pacing and splitting and resilience and how you're going to use all your sets to sort of foster some of those skills, as well as just the ones that are immediately in front of you for swimming.
So most of your coaching is competitive swimmers?
Yes, yeah. So I'm not actually coaching anymore. I haven't been since end of last year, but it was competitive swimmers. So I was assistant head coach at North Shore for a couple of years, working with Thomas.
Okay.
And then prior to that, I worked in a number of different groups at North Shore as a part-time coach. And then I worked briefly at Parnell Swim Club and Pukekohe as well, went part-time while I was sort of back studying in Auckland, and then moved to Wanaka and was working at Wanaka Swim Club for about 4 years. So, yeah.
Cool. What do you do when you're not coaching then?
I'm a sort of traffic engineer / data analyst. And so I sort of have been doing that on and off in between coaching and alongside coaching, sort of not working full time. Now I'm working full time on that and not coaching, but prior to that.
But you're down in Wanaka. There's no traffic there. How can you be a traffic analyst down in Wanaka? You've got to come back to Auckland if you want a real job then.
Yeah, I know, right?
Sounds like a bit of a cruisy role.
Nobody wants to be responsible for that traffic. That's so much pressure. No. That's why you move to Wanaka. It's an easier job.
The one traffic light in Wanaka. When you put up a deck chair and watch it all day long.
Well, there was actually a lot of controversy over that one traffic light as well. There's actually two now, sorry, and the second one got a lot of controversy. I'm not responsible for it. I work remotely for a company that's based in Brisbane. It's all myself as responsibility.
That's funny.
So you obviously would have bumped into and rubbed shoulders with Eddie down in Wanaka, right?
Yes.
Now, this is, maybe you can explain to me, dude, because I haven't had a chance to ask Eddie, but I will one day. He has got a great wetsuit brand and design that he sells, right? And I can't remember the name of it. Right? What's the name of it? Do you remember? Ruby Fresh. There you go. Right. So really awesome looking wetsuits. They look amazing. Whoever I've seen in them always speaks highly of them. But he markets them as freshwater wetsuits. Now, I'm not a particularly clever dude, but what would the difference be between a freshwater wetsuit and an ocean swimming wetsuit? Do you know?
I don't know, actually. It might be a better question for Eddie. I'm guessing perhaps it gives you a little bit more buoyancy because it's slightly less buoyant in the fresh water.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe more thickness for more cold protection down this way rather than in Auckland. I don't know.
We need to get Eddie on. We need to ask him.
So does Eddie wear a wetsuit, or is he a tog swimmer?
He's a wetsuit swimmer, I think.
Because almost all of the people that I've met who sell wetsuits swim in togs.
Oh, he's practicing what he preaches then. There you go.
Oh,
There you
that's
go.
good.
He's
Okay, we've got somebody who's actually,
proper salesman.
a proper salesman, yeah.
All right. So, I think the very first time that I had a proper conversation with you, Cameron, like is in more than a sentence, was just after your 1,000-meter swim in the ice at Alex. Okay. And I would describe you as maybe recovering like a teenage girl. How would you describe that recovery that you had after that 1 kilometer? That's a really fast 1 kilometer that you swam, by the way. What did you swim it in?
I think it was 13:06.
That's ridiculous. That's like our 500-meter times. How was your recovery?
I'm not sure what you mean by teenage girl by recovery. I'll let your listeners see if they can. I won't try and make any guesses, given that Jim mentioned how this is a family-friendly podcast as well.
Yes, exactly.
Well, you know what I take from that is that he actually recovered pretty well, because I always think that the girls are tougher than us, and we had some teenage girls swimming there, and their recoveries were so much better than mine. So
100%.
I think being said that you recover like a teenage girl is probably a good thing.
No, seriously, take us through your recovery, because it's obviously something new for you.
Yeah, I mean, the whole experience, I guess, was pretty brutal. It was, I guess, as brutal as I was expecting, and perhaps more in different ways. Some of the things that stuck out to me were that perhaps some of which I was expecting and some of which I wasn't, were things like not being able to feel the water going in my mouth and tell very well whether I was breathing water or air, and having to roll all the way around to breathe.
That's interesting.
Not being able to take my goggles off my head because of my fingers not working. That was definitely pretty memorable. Needing help to get changed, obviously. Just generally in the pool, like I remember swimming along, and when you do a touch turn, if you sort of do it properly, you bring your knees up, you tuck your knees in quite high, and you sort of bring them up under your body, and you don't get anywhere near the bottom of the pool. And I remember sort of from about 600 meters onwards, every turn I did, I was scraping my feet on the bottom, and I had no idea why that was happening, because in any normal state, I wouldn't go anywhere near that. So
that's very interesting.
One thing that stuck out. The nausea was another thing in the second half that stuck out. I was definitely nauseous for a period.
While you were swimming?
Yeah, while I was swimming, which was something I've never experienced before in the water at all. So that definitely stuck out. And then, I mean, just the brutal cold. I think everyone who's done something like that knows how long it takes to warm back up, the shivering, the number of layers I had on, the pain, particularly like underneath my fingers. I wasn't expecting that to be as excruciating as it was, warming things back up. That was probably the worst pain, I think, underneath my fingers, as they sort of all thawed out. And yeah, it took quite a long time. I know there were people that definitely took longer than me, but I remember I remember sitting in all those layers, however many layers of clothing I was wearing, probably 5, and a sleeping bag, and probably about 10 hot water bottles across my whole body. And I remember being inside the warm pool, being quite happy not to take any of that off for probably an hour and a half or so.
Yeah. Did you feel sort of fully recovered the next day, or were there still some symptoms hovering over the next day?
I think I felt mentally recovered. Physically recovered. Mentally, I didn't want to go near the cold water again. I think the trauma from the experience was definitely enough to put me off. And I remember I was actually entered in another event that day as well. I think I was meant to be doing the 50 backstroke or something in the afternoon, and I just could not face going near the cold water again. So from that perspective, I don't think I was recovered mentally.
So just interestingly enough, you've got a Guinness World Record for the fastest 200-meter IM, right?
Yes.
So did you know that I also got a Guinness World Record done in Alex?
Did you?
Yep.
Was it for your 2K?
No. I have had the most hot water bottles put on me after a swim.
And that was after your 2K or 2.2K, sorry.
28 hot water bottles is what we counted.
We kept on finding more.
Yeah, dude. So I can relate on the hot water bottles. It's you don't want to let go of them, eh?
No, they're necessary.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Well, you must have been lying on a bed of them or something.
I can't remember.
Yeah, pretty much. They were tucked all the way around. So the interesting thing with Duncan, when he got out, the nurses had taken one look at all the clothes that he'd prepared for afterwards and thrown them in the bin because they weren't up to their standard.
Yeah, they weren't merino.
No, they weren't. So we had to bundle him butt naked in a whole bunch of blankets and then start putting hot water bottles around him because the clothing wasn't deemed medically sufficient.
That was funny. Yeah. You've got another passion in music, right?
Yes. So I play the violin and viola, and I have played the violin since I was about 6 years old. So
Yep.
yeah, I enjoy doing that.
When do you find time to do all this shit?
Oh yeah, it can be difficult at times. Often I end up spending a lot of my day doing various different things, trying to train for swimming and then trying to practice violin and work and do other things. So yeah, it's always a bit of a struggle, and it was as a kid as well. Like all of those activities take up a lot of time, particularly if you want to be good at them. It's like anything; if you want to be good at something, you have to commit a certain amount of time to it. So
yeah. You still play the violin?
Yeah, no, I still play. Yeah, I play in an orchestra in Dunedin, mainly on the viola, but yeah, quite regularly. I think I've been down there 5 or 6 times this year. Do a few things locally as well. And I try and practice, every second day if I can. Mostly I do that. So yeah.
And there's no sort of musical thoughts or musical planning while you're swimming, for example. The two don't interlink anywhere.
I get songs stuck in my head like we all do while we're swimming.
Yeah.
I don't probably do any planning. I think, depends what sort of swimming. I think if I go on a long lake swim, I was training to swim 44K and just swimming along easily, I'm sure all sorts of thoughts would run through my head. The sort of swimming I'm doing at the moment, trying to train for 100 and 200 meter events, which is what I'm predominantly doing in Italy, is pretty intense. So your only focus tends to be on keeping the intensity up and what time you're doing, and then recovering when you finish a repeat. But yeah.
So you did a fundraising concert to help get to Italy just recently, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Yeah, we did a couple actually, one in Hawea and one in Wanaka, which was good fun. I did it with a friend who I've played with from Christchurch a few times before. It was actually an idea I got I did one for the swim club with another friend who was visiting from Australia, who I used to play music with, and we learnt from the same teacher as kids and stuff, and we played together forever, and she'd sort of come over to visit, and we were doing a bit of playing just for fun together, and we thought, we could do a concert for the swim club and raise some money, and so we did. And it was good fun, and it raised a bit of money, and so yeah, I sort of thought, that's something I could do for the ice swimming team. So yeah,
that's cool. It does sound fun. Yeah,
it's very cool. I'd like to say I'd come and join you, but I don't have a musical bone in my body, so I can maybe clap at the back. Or I don't know. What is that little triangle thing that you used to play as a kid? I can maybe handle one of those.
No, I think the timing on that's super critical. Okay. I don't think either of us would actually cut the mustard there.
I'll sell tickets at the door, Cameron. I got you. Tell me just the difference between. Maybe not so much swimming related, but maybe we can link it to the swimming community as well. But just the difference of living in Wanaka as opposed to living in Auckland. Do you find that's been, because you seem to have gone sort of outside of Auckland one step at a time and further away almost, right? What are you hiding from? What are you running away from?
Maybe I'm running from Auckland. No, I actually like Auckland. Generally, I don't like Auckland traffic, but I've still got my parents are up there, and I've obviously got strong connections to North Shore Swim Club and other places in Auckland. And it is a great city. So I do miss elements of it being down here. I guess the main reason to come down here is I love the outdoorsy stuff. I love hiking. I do lots of hiking, running, obviously swimming and lake swimming. And I've always loved clear, fresh water in particular. I like salt water, but I react really badly to those microscopic jellyfish, sea licey things that you get in Auckland up in up in the summer. And like I often go swimming and get covered in a rash and I'm itchy for days, and none of the rest of my family do. And so I typically, like for most of my life, I've actually not swum in the sea in Auckland between about January and sort of end of March, because I just can't go in without coming out in a rash and being itchy for days. So I kind of like not getting that so much down here in the lake. And yeah, I mean, the hiking and outdoorsy stuff is amazing down here. It's a pretty beautiful place to be if you're into that sort of stuff. And the swimming as well is pretty hard to beat, being out on the lake, and particularly when you get one of those glassy days with the lake's dead flat and the snow on the mountains and stuff. It's pretty hard to beat swimming in something like that.
Yeah. It's a stunning place. So next year you're off to Malvino in Italy.
Yeah, so I've never been to Italy before, actually, so that will be a fun experience. Looking forward to going and competing, and being part of the team and seeing the country, and it should be good fun and a good experience. Looks like a beautiful place as well. I've Googled it a couple of times. It looks spectacular in the Italian Alps, a little lake surrounded by mountains, so probably quite similar to where I am here. So it should be good fun.
Yeah, it just strikes me that it's going to be pretty hard to get some training in to go and do ice swimming when the water is just getting warmer and warmer and warmer in New Zealand. Are you one of the tough brigade that's got a freezer full of water that you jump into every now and then, or do you just rely on your lake?
At the moment, I don't, but I have actually purchased something to do that, because I think it is going to... At the moment, the lake sort of has a bit of a lag to the air temperature, and we've had a really wet sort of cold start to spring anyway. So the lake's still sitting around 10 to 11 degrees, depending on the time of day and the day at the moment. So it's still pretty good for cold water training, but I know that won't last for too much longer, particularly when you get a few still flat sunny days. So, I have invested in an ice bath to be able to...
Good on you. Good on you. Yeah.
If I recall, you swam, Alexi, in a pair of briefs, not jammers, correct? What's the preference for a brief? Jammers. You swam in jammers?
Yeah, but they were racing jammers. I remember it wasn't easy getting out of the togs after a 1K there, because the hands don't work very well, eh?
Was it a tech suit?
Yeah, it was, and they're pretty tight, those ones.
Oh, man.
Hard on my support crew, of which Jim was one, so thank you, Jim, to get them off.
I wasn't going to bring that up.
Okay. But I would imagine you're looking for any benefit that you can have, right? So you're going to use a tech suit again in Italy?
Yes, no, I will. My theory is obviously they're a little bit faster. They're not that much faster, but they give you a bit of a psychological boost and make you fractionally quicker. I guess my other theory, which could be wrong, is that they maybe give you a tiny little bit more insulation as well. I don't know if that's actually true, but I'm going to cling to it anyway.
Yeah, anything can't say.
It actually would be interesting to check that, hey? Because I guess technically they're not sort of water absorbent, they're water repellent, right? So technically speaking, you're sort of dry under there, right? Ish. But I think we're grasping at straws here, dude. I don't think that's going to keep you any warmer.
Look, anything mental helps, eh?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely.
So what type of running have you done down in Wanaka? Have you done like lots of trail runs and stuff like that?
Yeah, I sort of, I try to go running to most days. Even now, I'm not doing as much. I only go for half an hour now, mainly to exercise the dog. But yeah, I've been into hiking and running. I've got a friend who I've run a couple of marathons before. Most recently, the Auckland one last year. And I've got a friend who's sort of into marathon running as well. And we've done a lot of the New Zealand Great Walks in a day. So running / walking them over, period of hours. So it's probably was good I'd done some of them before I did my lake swim. So it was probably good mental preparation for that because it's a similar sort of experience having to keep going for that period of time when you're doing sort of, I think the longest one we've done is Heafy and Old Ghost Road, which are about 80K. But we had another one which was probably harder than that in terms of duration because they had more climbing and more technical track. We did the Milford track together with another track called Door Pass, which starts at sort of the divide and you sort of go over to the Milford track and then you walk the Milford track. And we did that and it sort of took us almost 6 hours to get over to the start of the Milford track. So, and we still had the 55 or so K of the Milford track to go. And then we got to the end of that about midnight and we had this inflatable pack raft with us and we blew up this pack raft on the wharf and sort of two of us squeezed into this sort of one-person pack raft with one person. I had my legs out over the front of the sort of pull-up and was sort of lying back on my friend who was sitting in the back and we sort of took turns paddling and we paddled across from Sandfly Point back to where the car was parked in Deepwater Basin. And that took about an hour sort of trying to sort of paddle like this and this little pack raft at midnight. So that was quite an experience. Certainly not something you do every day. And then we actually had to drive all the way back to Te Anau, which is another couple of hours. That was probably the most dangerous part of the whole thing was trying to having been walking for about 18 or 19 hours and then try to drive for 2 hours back to Te Anau. But it was good fun. So yeah, I've done a lot of that stuff sort of around here and yeah, I really enjoy it.
So the next stage is to get a waterproof backpack and go swim camping.
Yeah, well, I was actually thinking sitting in that pack raft, I'd be much more comfortable and this would be faster swimming than I would be sitting in this pack raft. The only thing would be, how to deal with my gear and also keep warm enough. You'd probably need some sort of wetsuit or something because I think sorry, go on.
There's a couple of people in England who do it. So, you can buy backpacks that are completely waterproof and towable and things like that. So,
they actually call it swim camping. Yep, you tow this thing across whatever, and they set up camp and make a little barbecue and spend the night sleeping, and off the next morning they swim somewhere else. So Jim and I are quite keen to give that a go.
Yeah,
possibly in summer. So we'll keep you posted.
Let me know.
Yeah, it sounds pretty cool, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't have to swim far. The whole point is just probably getting to somewhere where you wouldn't be able to get to otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's on the bucket list?
In terms of swimming or?
Yeah.
Not exactly sure at the moment. I'd like to do another long swim, but then part of me gets put off that by the sort of organisation and the amount it impinges on other people. Like you can't just go off and do that sort of thing by yourself. If I could, I'd probably go off and do it in a heartbeat. But I'd love to swim something like Lake Hawe. That's probably my favourite spot to swim down here, and it's a little bit shorter than Lake Wanaka. But yeah, whether the logistics of it all get too much. Not sure. I'd like to do some more pool racing, particularly when I turn 40. I know nobody likes to wish that they're going to get older, but sort of the 5-year bans of masters swimming records, sort of I had a go at 35 to 39, and I'm sort of like, when I turn 40, I might have another go at records there. So they're probably the main things that I sort of think about at the moment, and otherwise just generally swimming for fitness. I love swimming, which is mainly why I do it. I'm not always doing it for events. At times it's just to keep fit. there's a lot of local events, open water events around here, which are good fun. Things like the Ruby, there's a Wakatipu Legend swim that you've probably heard of. There's another swim in Twizel now. So there's quite a few around here, which are always just good fun to do because they're local and they're kind of cool, unique sort of events.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we look forward to seeing you swim long again, dude. But I think what might make it a little bit more enjoyable is you don't have to go as fast as you go, dude. You can just ease back a bit and enjoy it, right?
Just imagine how much more fun it would have been if you'd spent 22 minutes doing your kilometre instead of 13 minutes. You'd have had so much more fun.
I would have had so much more fun for the next week in hospital or something. That I would have had fun in my grave.
Are you going to come back and do a mile in the ice?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. It is something I'd like to do one day. Whether it's next year or not, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'll see how I feel after Italy, and
yeah. Well, if it's any consolation, swimming the ice in a lake as opposed to a pool is significantly, for me, I guess I can't speak for everybody, but it's mentally just not easier, but it is easier. It's different. It's just nicer. So if you are going to do a mile, 100% recommend it in the lake. So down at St. Bathans, for example, as opposed to in the pool, because the pool's quite serious. You know, like you said, tumble turning, breathing. You're trying to monitor everything. Whereas when you're doing it in the lake, it's nobody really cares what time you swim, right? It's about getting to the end and sort of just finishing, right? So we'll keep a spot open for you, dude. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is something I'd like to do one day. And, I find it pretty impressive, all the people that have done it, and people like yourself who've done over 2 kilometres is something that's mind-blowing to me. So,
well, you said you get brain freeze when you swim. I don't get brain freeze because I don't have a brain, right? So it's all relative, right? So, but we obviously thoroughly enjoy the community of us swimming. The people are just so amazing, and obviously, you sort of stretch yourself to limits well beyond you've been before, and you're relying on, in your case, you relied on Jim to assist you after your swim and make sure you were safe and recovered, and so it's just a good place for me. I always come back from those events thinking, hey, the world's a good place. There's some good people in the world, which is quite nice. And then I come back and hang out in Auckland, and my mind changes pretty quickly again.
And I think that's probably one of the things that struck me the most about the Ice Champs was the sort of, for want of a better word, the sort of feel-good atmosphere around it, and everyone being sort of happy to support and help each other. Normal sort of warm water pool swimming competitions, everyone's quite serious and everyone's sort of focused on doing their own thing, and that's all about sort of me, and I'm doing this, and I'm warming up now, and I'm racing this person, got to beat this person. Whereas when you're at the Ice Champs, everyone's cheering for everyone, and everyone's wanting everyone just to finish and get to the end, and everyone's helping everyone else get changed and recover and get ready and be prepared, and just that sort of, the whole camaraderie of it was a really great experience for me. So,
yeah, very pleasant. Yeah. Okay. Well, it's been an awesome chat. Thank you so much for joining us, Cameron. Really appreciate your time.
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Cameron. I really appreciate it. You're a legend, dude, and we look up to you and look forward to following your swimming career.
And the bubbles if we're in the same lane.
Yeah. Watching you scrape your feet at the bottom of the pool. All good. Thanks, mate. We'll see you in the water.
Yes, thank you.
Well, thanks for listening. We recorded this a month or so before we released it. So when you heard him talking about it being cold down in the South Island, I'm sure it's not quite so cold anymore. But that's the way it goes. As always, if you've got any comments, suggestions or feedback, just reach out to us at cleverdixnz@gmail.com, or you can leave us a message on our Instagram account. Cheers. Bye.